speak tonight. Just a reminder to please say your name and address.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Linda Blakesly, and I live at 27 Berry Avenue. And so tonight, the theme of my address is racism hurts everyone. Nearly 2 years into the COVID pandemic, the second pandemic, racism, continues to be only half-heartedly addressed by town and government officials and agencies in this town. What follows is much of what I spoke about last February 16th, 2021. Some of you may find it familiar. It is still relevant today. The town of Coventry must declare racism a public health crisis. As local Power Up Connecticut CEO and founder Karen Prescott says, you cannot cure what you cannot diagnose. Just because we live in a predominantly white town does not mean that racism is not impacting all of our residents. We owe it to the children in this town who will one day be global citizens to create equitable systems in which all children can thrive and outcomes are not determined by race. They are watching. They are learning. One day, they will be making decisions in the world that impact all people, including the most marginalized and disenfranchised populations. Health inequities affect millions of BIPOC through systemic barriers and social determinants. We are all part of this system. If we are not doing everything we can to dismantle it, then we are upholding it and perpetuating it. Following this statement last February, it seems many of our residents could use a basic definition and understanding of racism. Racism comes in many forms. It can be blatant, targeted, overt racism seen in single incidences. Racism also comes in the form of microaggressions that are learned through our own racial socialization and show up in many ways, both consciously and unconsciously. Racist messages are embedded in our culture through education, media, and the dominant white culture, for example. Racism is also built into public and government policy, which has been proven in such historic cases such as redlining and banking discrimination, to name two. Racism does indeed exist in Coventry. It absolutely affects the citizens of this town every day. There's no doubt that all these methods of racism are happening here every day. There's a message on the fences of Coventry Grammar School that states we are all equal. This message is a lie. We are not all equal. Government policies have been designed to ensure just that we are all not equal. A sign such as this tells me that Coventry does not get it. Maybe the signs makes the white people in town feel good, but the message it sends is that the work here is done or is not necessary. The sign is a lie. We are not even close to equal, and we are far from done. Tonight, once again, I am asking the town council to declare racism a public health crisis. This declaration will serve as a commitment by this town to dismantle racism and foster a community that is equitable to all stakeholders. Unless this declaration is made, all other actions are disingenuous from my point of view. Having a community conversation is a huge deal, but does nothing to address the health and social inequities that exist and plague BIPOC community members. A statement from the town council denouncing racism carries no clout without a declaration and commitment to critically and objectively examine current policies through a racial equity lens. It is not reasonable or realistic to expect a defunct, inactive Human Rights Commission with newly recruited members to take on such an enormous task of auditing policies and making recommendations from a racial equity standpoint. To me, all this is merely checking a box. To me, all this is passing the charge on to someone else. Prove me wrong. First, declare racism a public health crisis. I request that this be reconsidered by steering, and then voted on by the town council within a few meeting cycles. I look forward to hearing your discussion and vote on this pertinent matter. Thank you. Should I leave my remarks?
Certainly, you want to leave them up on that table and then we can give them to the, actually Linda, put them right up on this table here so we can pass those along to the woman who does minutes. If you have a digital version that you want to email to Laura Stone,
Sure.
then that can be attached to the minutes.
Thank you.
Happy to do that.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for audience of citizens? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close audience of citizens and